All right, it's time for another video. Lamar Azmo, and this will be a Great Society Ministries video because this is about religion, and as you can see from the title, this is about Oman and Ibadhism. This is a very concise yet informative and good read, published in 1980. The first edition was by Ahmed Hamoud Al-Maamiry, and I'll probably put the title in the description box at some point. But this book is important because it gives the basics on and beliefs of one of the lesser known sects within Islam, the Ibadis, predominantly found where they actually are in power in Oman, but they're minority communities in Algeria. There's the islands off the coast of Libya. Also in East Africa and Zanzibar, they have a presence. And I personally like this school of thought within Islam because for me it's one of those because I don't know if a lot of people are not so familiar with the method of when you have competing factions or people arguing, you get the two opinions from the combatants or the the opponents, but then there's always this third middle. There's a third party that is probably more so in the middle, that is probably more reliable. And I think in the case of Islam, the Ibadis demonstrate that third, I guess you could say, group or third party in the dispute that can give you a more accurate account. And but that's with that being said, I'm not an Ibadi. Primarily, I'm not an Ibadi because of their stance on Ali, the son of Abu Talib, or as the Arabs, I think it's Ali ibn Abi Talib, or you'll see it Ali ibn Abu Talib. Their stance on Ali is problematic for me, as well as his other family members, and their opinion of some of the other quote unquote companions of the Prophet Muhammad, for me, are problematic, which is why I don't categorize myself within the sect. Although, and this is a big although I like a lot of their methodology, especially in terms of them being conciliatory and wanting peace and understanding and unity between Muslims and even non-Muslims for that matter. Rhetorically, you'll hear that a lot from Ibadi scholars, and then actually in practice, the Oman is tolerant towards other religions. They allow people from various parts of the world to follow their religion while in Oman, and even build or they facilitate these other religions. So it's not a despotic and rude place like the Al Saud crime syndicate's kingdom. They actually try to treat, at least in the case of religious tolerance, they actually adhere to that. But let's get into some of the doctrine. So this is part one, and this is chapter one, and it has the meaning of Islam. Okay, this is according to Ibadis. Originally, and before I get into it, unfortunately, Ibadis are starting to change into actually, I would argue that Ibadis are becoming more and more quote unquote, and I say quote unquote because the Sunnis try to claim that they call themselves Sunnis because they say they're following the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, but I would beg to differ with them on that account, because I feel that number one, they don't know that for sure, because what they think is composes of the authentic Sunnah was written down and codified, 200 years after the life ended of the Prophet Muhammad, at least 200 years, perhaps even more. Another factor is the sources and some of their early, I guess you can say, proto-Sunni sectarians. I don't validate their them attributing themselves to the Sunnah as they do. But with that being said, Ibadis are starting to become Sunni in a sense, because as we'll see from the reading of this book, their opinion of the Caliph Uthman was at odds with the Sunnis. But there's an Ibadi scholar here on YouTube from Oman who actually, when he mentions Uthman, he says, may Allah be pleased with him, which according to the founders of his school and individuals from as late as the 1980s, as Al-Maamiry would not have said, may Allah be pleased with Uthman. And we'll find out why. This will be another ongoing adventure that we go on here on this channel. But without any more intro, Islam means submission to God, and Muslims are submitted to the authority of Allah only. Submission to God does not need any mediation or mediator, and that is why all the prophets of God are regarded by Muslims as Muslims. Thus, Islam is introduced as the natural religion that is based on and is harmonious with human nature and conscience. For the authority of God is a natural thing to believe in. Submission simply means to follow and obey the teachings of God, to believe in one and only one God, and that Muhammad is his true messenger, through whom came his teachings. Using the term Mohammedan for Muslims or Mohammedanism for Islam is objectionable to Muslims because Muslims do not worship Muhammad. Muslims worship God alone, and Muhammad is simply his messenger and apostle, who led his followers into the light of truth, commanding great respect, but cannot be raised above the level of man. As the ideal person, Muhammad's way of life is exemplary not only to Muslims but to all people. Thus, Islam is a comprehensive religion, spiritually, socially, economically, culturally, psychologically, and in all other aspects is an ideal system which allows no loophole for criticism, and because of its comprehensive nature, Islam has remained and will continue to remain intact to the day of judgment. Anyone interested to learn about Islam will do so from the Quran and from those prophetic traditions which are recognized to be correct. Thus, the truth is there for everybody who is interested to know it, and there is no room to avoid it in a pretext for seeking what is one's convenience. The straight path is the only one that God's teachings and prophetic traditions, and this cannot be subdivided. Okay, let me redo that in case I miss. That is God's teachings and prophetic traditions, and this cannot be subdivided. For reasons of differences in interpretation of certain Quranic verses and prophetic traditions by later students of Islam, we find today many sects among Muslims, and although each sect claimed to be the ideal, it is only those who follow the Holy Quran and the recognized prophetic traditions that are on the straight path, regardless of what sect they might belong to. Checking my time. It is common these days to find that some people prefer a certain sect with full confidence in all its beliefs without bothering to go into details of such a sect, and conversely hate another sect also without trying to know its details. Here lies the mistake, since blind following is generally misleading. Among the divisions of Muslim sects are those who call themselves the righteous people, just people, perfect people. And it's just funny because I never came across a group that called themselves the just sect. Used to be there was a movement in Islam, early Islam, called the Mu'tazila, and they prefer to use rationality and reason above just being dogmatic and religious, and they call themselves the people of justice, Ahlul Adl. And they made a lot of good points, but I differ with them on free will. They were proponents of free will, because they believe in order for Allah to be just, man's actions had to be free, totally free, to choose between good and evil, and sinning and not sinning. In other words, everything that you do in this life cannot already be predetermined. Otherwise, God is unjust. That was the Mutazilat stance, and they called themselves the people of justice, as this or just people. But I never came across a group that called themselves perfect so far in my research. Okay, continuing on. Such beliefs based on sectarian selfishness should perish and be replaced by the fact that in Islam there is only one community, that is the Muslim community, which has been nurtured by the Almighty God with blessings. All Muslim sects believe in two main sources for their guidance, the Quran and the prophetic traditions, and each sect claims that it follows the Quran and the traditions. It was the sectarian fanaticism, political elements, remoteness of Muslims among themselves, and ignorance of one sect about the other, which acted as barriers and prevented the Muslims from knowing each other. Now that Muslims come into closer contact among themselves and know each other better, it is time their sectarian differences be eradicated and their word united. No special sect can claim to be the sole follower of the prophetic traditions. All and call itself Ahlul Sunnah. See, even the Ibadis used to agree with me. Sunnis cannot call themselves Ahlul Sunnah. That's they're overstepping their boundaries, because again, they don't have empirical evidence that their hadith collections are indeed authentic. They'll tell you that Sahih Bukhari and Muslim are authentic, but they don't have they don't have empirical, beyond a shadow of a doubt, evidence that it is. And if you check my earlier video that I did on why I don't really take hadiths too seriously, you'll understand why. Because some of these hadiths have chains of transmission that go back over a century, and it has like 30 people in the chain of narration. Which, if you ever played a game of telephone, or what some people call Chinese whisper, you'll know that it's hard for you to get the same. If you tell one person something, by the time it reaches the 30th person or the 20th person, it'll be altered. And that's around the same time frame, So imagine that, plus adding 100 or more years between the Prophet Muhammad saying X and then X being transmitted perfectly. Now, continuing on, it was sectarian fanaticism, political elements. Okay, I already read that. I'm sorry. All Muslims, as long as they follow the Quran and traditions, are Ahlul Sunnah, regardless of their trifling differences, which are superficial, such as recitation of Bismillahi during prayer, raising of the hands at glorification, Allahu Akbar, straightening the finger while witnessing that there is no God but Allah, staying till dawn with ritual and purity. Staying till dawn with ritual and purity during the month of Ramadan, reducing the prayers when traveling, and heritage and such small things. Perhaps the question of consensus may be more controversial. This term consensus, ijma, is the conclusion arrived at as a result of independent judgment on the legal questions based on interpretation and application of the four foundations of Islamic jurisprudence, namely the Quran, Sunnah, analogy, and that's qiyas. They're adding Arab words to this, and consensus, ijma. An effort to come to that judgment is called ijtihad, as opposed to individual judgment of taqlid. Okay. I guess I'll do one more paragraph, then I'll stop. When a Shia, for example, says that the Muslims have reached a consensus, he means the followers of his sect. And similarly, when the Sunni says so, he means the followers of the four sects. This belief sounds incoherent in that the consensus is valid only when followers of all sects sit together and make an effort, ijtihad, to reach a consensus. There is no reason, therefore, to believe that one sect is inferior to another. The fact that each sect in Islam has rendered notable services in one way or the other makes it imperative that all Muslims belong to one community. Now I'm going to stop there. It's pretty interesting how the author kind of contradicted himself already, because he said nobody has a claim to authenticity, and we should all have unity. Yet he actually said also that there is a tradition. And then earlier on in the reading, that I actually remember that, but he's right in the sense that no school has smoking gun evidence that their way is correct. They don't have empirical evidence. I'm gonna stop right here. See you in the future video, God willing. Thanks for watching.